A karate master tells a one-legged veteran he can't train, publicly humiliating the decorated Marine in front of laughing students who film his stumbling attempts at basic forms. The arrogant dojo owner doubles down when cameras roll, claiming disabled warriors would contaminate his elite training standards. But the quiet janitor mopping floors in the corner isn't just another employee. This is Donnie Yen himself, the Wing Chun legend who's been watching this cruelty unfold while recovering from his own injuries. The master has no idea he just destroyed a hero's dignity in front of a man who spent decades perfecting the deadliest martial arts on earth. While students mock the veteran's prosthetic leg, the greatest fighter alive sets down his mop and steps forward with lethal calm. The veteran recognizes his childhood hero and steps back, knowing the reckoning has begun. The master's smirk fades as he realizes the janitor moves like liquid death, but it's already too late to apologize. What happens when you humiliate a warrior in front of a living legend? Will the master survive learning why some people should never be underestimated? What happened next would shatter the bully's arrogance forever. Before we jump back and tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. Bobby Crawford gripped the steering wheel of his Chevy pickup, staring at his new prosthetic leg in the dim glow of the VA hospital parking lot. At 6 in the morning, the lot was nearly empty, just like the hollow feeling in his chest. The carbon fiber device looked sleek and modern, but it felt like a constant reminder of everything he'd lost 8 months ago in Helmand Province. The IED had torn through their convoy like the fist of God, claiming his left leg below the knee and 2 good Marines who'd never make it home to their families. Staff Sergeant Bobby Crawford, decorated Marine, leader of men, protector of the innocent, had become just another broken veteran learning to walk again that he drove the familiar streets to his modest ranch house, where Linda was already getting their twin daughters ready for school. Emma and Grace, both 8 years old with their mother's auburn hair and his blue eyes, barely looked up from their cereal bowls as he limped through the kitchen. "How did physical therapy go?" Linda asked, her voice carrying that careful tone she'd perfected over the past months, supportive but not pushy, concerned but not pitying. "Fine," he mumbled, pouring coffee into a travel mug. The lie tasted bitter on his tongue. Later that evening, Bobby sat in the backyard watching his daughters play soccer, their laughter echoing across the small lawn. Once he would have been out there with them, teaching them footwork and strategy. Now he felt like a spectator in his own life, watching through glass. The stack of unpaid bills on the kitchen counter reminded him daily that his disability checks barely covered their expenses. Linda had taken extra hours at the elementary school where she taught, but the strain showed in the dark circles under her eyes. That night, as Linda slept beside him, Bobby opened his laptop and typed into the search bar, "How to feel normal." Again, the cursor blinked mockingly at him for several minutes before he tried again. Veterans PTSD recovery. Article after article filled his screen, support groups, therapy options, medication trials. But buried in the search results, one headline caught his attention: "Martial arts helping veterans reclaim their lives. The discipline that builds warriors can rebuild them too." Bobby clicked the link and began to read about discipline, focus, and finding purpose through physical and mental training. For the first time in months, something flickered behind his ribs, a tiny spark that might have been hope. Bobby's coffee grew cold as he scrolled through martial arts websites, creating a list of local schools. Most looked like strip mall operations, with flashy advertisements and promises of quick black belts. But Dragon's Gate Dojo stood out from the rest. Their website showcased tournament trophies, newspaper clippings of student achievements, and testimonials from serious practitioners. The school's motto, "Forging Warriors, Building Champions," resonated with his military background. These people understood what it meant to be a warrior. He called the number listed, and a friendly woman named Mrs. Rodriguez scheduled him for a visit that afternoon. "Master Nakamura teaches our advanced class at 2:30, she explained. "You're welcome to observe and get a feel for our training philosophy." Bobby spent the morning doing his prescribed physical therapy exercises, testing his balance on one leg, working through the stretches that kept his injured muscles flexible. The prosthetic felt foreign against his skin, but the doctor said that would improve with time. At 2 o'clock, he drove to the strip mall, where Dragon's Gate Dojo occupied a corner unit with large windows facing the parking lot. The building looked professional and well-maintained, with clean glass that offered clear views of the training mats inside. As he walked toward the entrance, a middle-aged Asian man in work clothes was emptying trash cans outside the building. The janitor had graying hair and moved with a slight limp, his weathered hands suggesting years of physical labor. When he noticed Bobby approaching, the man straightened and nodded respectfully. "Good afternoon," the janitor said, his English accented but clear. He stepped aside and held the door open with a small bow of his head. "Thanks," Bobby replied, struck by the man's polite demeanor. In his experience, most people barely acknowledge service workers, but something about this janitor commanded quiet respect. Bobby entered the lobby, taking in trophy cases filled with gleaming awards, framed certificates covering the walls, and photographs of students in tournament action. The success stories were impressive: regional champions, national qualifiers, testimonials from satisfied parents and adult students. Mrs. Rodriguez, a warm woman in her 50s, welcomed him from behind the reception desk and explained he could watch the advanced class from the viewing area. Behind him, the janitor quietly wheeled in his cart and began mopping the entrance tiles with methodical precision. Mrs. Rodriguez led Bobby to a row of chairs facing the main training area, where 15 students ranging from teenagers to adults in their 40s were warming up under the watchful eye of Master Vincent Nakamura. The instructor cut an imposing figure, perfectly groomed, athletic build, and an aura of absolute authority that commanded immediate attention. Bobby settled into his chair as the class began with synchronized kata, their movements crisp and powerful. The discipline impressed him. These students moved with the precision he remembered from Marine close-quarters combat training, every technique executed with deadly seriousness. Master Nakamura prowled the edges of the group, his dark eyes missing nothing. When he demonstrated techniques, his form was flawless, textbook perfect in every detail. "Power without precision is worthless," he called out to his students. "In competition, second place is first loser." The janitor worked quietly around the room's perimeter, occasionally pausing in his cleaning to watch the techniques being demonstrated. Bobby noticed the man's posture shift subtly during these moments, his casual stance becoming more alert, more focused. His weathered hands gripped the mop handle with what seemed like unnecessary intensity. During partner drills, students executed throws and joint locks with controlled aggression. The advanced practitioners moved with confidence, born of years of training, their techniques flowing smoothly from defense to counterattack. Bobby found himself imagining how such skills might help him regain the confidence he'd lost along with his leg. Master Nakamura emphasized competition preparation throughout the lesson. "Tournaments separate the dedicated from the dilettantes," he announced. "Only through testing yourself against worthy opponents do you discover what you're truly made of." One student accidentally knocked over a water bottle during a spinning kick, sending it rolling across the mat. The janitor immediately moved to clean up the spill, apologizing quietly in his accented English, while several students barely acknowledged his presence. Bobby watched the man work with growing respect. Despite being largely invisible to the students, the janitor maintained his dignity and performed his duties with quiet professionalism. Something about his movements suggested depths that contradicted his humble position. As the class concluded with formal bows and respectful dismissals, Bobby felt inspired by what he'd witnessed. The discipline, the focus, the sense of purpose. These were exactly what he'd been missing since leaving the Corps. Master Nakamura toweled sweat from his forehead as students began filing out. Bobby rose from his chair, his prosthetic clicking slightly against the floor, and approached the instructor with growing hope. Bobby introduced himself to Master Nakamura, extending his hand with the crisp professionalism ingrained by years of military service. "I'm Bobby Crawford. I served 3 tours in Afghanistan as a Marine Staff Sergeant, and I'm interested in beginning martial arts training." Nakamura's initial response seemed positive as he shook Bobby's hand with a firm grip. "Military background is excellent foundation for martial arts discipline. What combat experience do you have?" "Hand-to-hand combat training, close quarters combat, tactical operations," Bobby replied, encouraged by the master's interest. I'm looking for something to help with both physical conditioning and mental focus during my transition to civilian life. The conversation continued smoothly until Nakamura's sharp eyes noticed Bobby's slight limp and the subtle difference in how he distributed his weight. You seem to favor your right leg. Old injury. Bobby took a deep breath, deciding honesty was the best approach. I lost my left leg below the knee to an IED 8 months ago. I have a prosthetic now, and I'm looking for training that might help with balance, coordination, and getting back into fighting shape. The change in Nakamura's demeanor was immediate and devastating. His expression shifted from professional interest to cold dismissal, his posture straightening as if distancing himself from contamination. My dojo trains warriors, not charity cases, Nakamura stated flatly, his voice carrying across the training area where several students were still packing their gear. We maintain certain standards here that your condition would compromise. Bobby felt heat rise in his cheeks as nearby students turned to stare. Master Nakamura, I understand your concerns, but my military training and determination, physical integrity is essential to martial arts mastery. Nakamura cut him off, his voice growing louder and more dismissive. How can you expect to achieve proper stance and balance when you're missing fundamental body parts? My students train for competition, not rehabilitation. Several students had stopped packing to listen, some pulling out phones as if sensing drama. The janitor in the corner had frozen mid-mop, his knuckles white against the handle as he witnessed the cruel exchange. I've served my country with honor, Bobby said quietly, fighting to maintain his composure. I'm asking for the chance to prove I can train hard and learn your techniques. Nakamura's laugh was harsh and dismissive. Honor doesn't overcome physical reality. I won't lower my standards to accommodate disabilities. Find a therapy center, not a serious dojo. The humiliation burned through Bobby's chest as students whispered and a few openly snickered. He turned toward the exit, his face blazing with shame, and limped past the janitor whose dark eyes reflected something that might have been controlled fury. Outside in his truck, Bobby's hands shook as he started the engine, Nakamura's words echoing in his mind like shrapnel. Bobby arrived home to find Linda preparing dinner, humming softly as she stirred a pot of spaghetti sauce. She took one look at his face and immediately set down the wooden spoon. How did it go at the dojo? She asked gently, wiping her hands on her apron. Bobby slumped into a kitchen chair, the words tumbling out in a rush of pain and anger. He described Nakamura's cold dismissal, the snickering students, the public humiliation that made him feel like damaged goods instead of a decorated Marine. That bastard, Linda whispered, her green eyes flashing with protective fury. How dare he treat you like that? We should report him, file a complaint. To who? Bobby asked bitterly. It's his business. He can train whoever he wants. That evening, their neighbor Tom Wilson stopped by to borrow jumper cables and noticed Bobby's dejected mood. Tom, a Navy veteran who'd served in the Gulf War, listened to the story with growing outrage. This is bullshit, brother, Tom said, pulling out his phone. Mind if I share this with the local vets group? People need to know what kind of man they're giving their money to. By morning, Tom's post in the Riverside Veterans Facebook group had exploded across social media. Comments poured in from fellow veterans, military families, and civilians expressing outrage at Nakamura's discrimination. The story spread beyond veteran circles, shared hundreds of times with tags like #veteranrights and #discrimination. Janet Parker from Channel 7 News called Bobby's house before noon. Mr. Crawford, we'd like to do a story about your experience at Dragon's Gate Dojo. This kind of discrimination against disabled veterans deserves public attention. The evening news segment hit like a bomb. Local veteran denied martial arts training due to disability, played footage of Dragon's Gate Dojo while Bobby described the incident. When reporters contacted Nakamura for comment, he doubled down with devastating arrogance. My dojo trains warriors for competition, Nakamura stated on camera. Disabled students would dilute our warrior spirit and lower our championship standards. I won't compromise excellence for political correctness. Social media erupted in condemnation. Bobby watched the coverage from his couch, Linda's hand in his, feeling somehow worse now that his private humiliation had become public spectacle. The next morning, Donnie Chun arrived at Dragon's Gate Dojo to find protest signs taped to the windows and negative reviews printed out and stuck to the front door. He quietly peeled them down before other staff members arrived, depositing the papers in his maintenance cart. Working as a janitor for 3 months had given him the perfect cover while recovering from the shoulder surgery and damaged knee that ended his last film's production early. The injuries weren't career-ending, but they required rest and rehabilitation away from the pressures of Hong Kong cinema and Hollywood expectations, taking this humble position under the false identity. Mrs. Rodriguez had helped him create allowed him to study American martial arts culture without the burden of celebrity. He'd wanted to understand how Western schools approached training, philosophy, and the business of teaching fighting arts. What he'd discovered troubled him deeply. Donnie, whose real name was Donnie Yen, had grown up in a tradition where martial arts served to build character, protect the weak, and strengthen community bonds. His mother's Wing Chun lineage emphasized adaptation over rigid adherence to form. True masters modified techniques to accommodate student limitations, not exclude them entirely. That yesterday's cruelty had violated everything martial arts should represent. He'd watched a decorated warrior, a man who'd sacrificed his body defending others, being mocked by pampered students who'd never faced real danger. The sight had filled him with controlled rage that took all his discipline to contain. His own journey from Hong Kong action films to international stardom had been marked by constant adaptation to injuries. Broken bones, torn ligaments, and surgical recoveries had forced him to modify techniques countless times. Each setback had taught him that true martial arts mastery meant finding new ways to achieve effectiveness within physical limitations. Now, cleaning the aftermath of last night's protests, he reflected on his purpose here. He'd come to observe and learn, but witnessing injustice demanded action. His mother had taught him that skill without compassion was empty technique, and masters who crushed spirits instead of building them had forgotten the warrior's true duty. Behind him, Master Nakamura's car pulled into the parking lot. Through the window, Donnie watched him survey the remaining evidence of public outrage with angry gestures, clearly blaming everyone except himself for the situation. The janitor returned to his work, but his mind was already moving beyond observation toward intervention. Point 3 Sleepless nights had passed since the news coverage, but Bobby couldn't let go of the need to prove himself. He sat in the Dragon's Gate parking lot at 2:15, watching students arrive for the afternoon advanced class through windows that still showed faint tape residue from yesterday's protests. His hands trembled slightly as he rehearsed what he'd say to Nakamura. One chance. That's all he needed to demonstrate that determination could overcome physical limitations. The nightmares had been worse lately, mixing memories of the IED explosion with visions of mocking students, creating a toxic blend that left him exhausted but driven. Bobby waited until the class ended before entering the dojo. Mrs. Rodriguez looked surprised to see him, her kind eyes reflecting concern and sympathy. "Mr. Crawford, I'm not sure Master Nakamura." "Please," Bobby interrupted quietly. "I just need 5 minutes." Nakamura emerged from the training area, still toweling sweat from his neck. When he saw Bobby, his expression hardened with annoyance and barely concealed anger about the negative publicity. "I thought I made my position clear," Nakamura said coldly. "Give me one chance to show I can train," Bobby pleaded, his voice steady despite the churning in his stomach. "One demonstration. If I can't keep up, I'll leave and never come back." Several students had lingered to watch, and a few parents looked up from their phones with obvious interest in the confrontation. Nakamura glanced around, noting the audience, then smiled with predatory calculation. "Fine," he announced loudly enough for everyone to hear. "Show everyone what a one-legged man can do in a real dojo." The pronouncement drew more attention as remaining students pulled out phones to record. Bobby's chest tightened, but he nodded acceptance of the challenge. Nakamura demonstrated a basic kata, simple movements involving turns, kicks, and balanced stances. "Replicate this form," he commanded with obvious expectation of failure. Bobby attempted the sequence, his prosthetic clicking against the hardwood floor. His balance wavered during the first spinning kick, and he stumbled slightly on a transition move. Snickers rippled through the small audience as phones captured every awkward moment. "This is exactly what I meant," Nakamura announced triumphantly. Martial arts require complete physical capability. But Bobby refused to quit. He attempted the form again, sweat beading on his forehead, determination overriding embarrassment. That Bobby's third attempt at the kata showed marginal improvement, but his balance remained compromised during the spinning techniques. His prosthetic caught awkwardly on a turning kick, sending him stumbling sideways as laughter grew louder from the student audience. Phone cameras captured every moment of his struggle. Pathetic, someone whispered, the word cutting through Bobby's concentration like a blade. That he tried once more, driven by pure stubborn will. But the combination of physical limitation, emotional pressure, and cruel mockery proved overwhelming. During the final spinning kick, his prosthetic leg twisted wrong, and he went down hard, his artificial limb making a sharp crack against the wooden floor. The laughter became openly cruel now, students sharing recorded videos in real time as Bobby struggled to regain his footing. The humiliation burned through him like acid, worse than any physical wound he'd endured in combat. "I think we've seen enough," Nakamura announced with satisfied cruelty. "Perhaps now you understand why serious dojos maintain standards." Bobby pushed himself upright, his face blazing with shame and defeat. He'd proven nothing except Nakamura's point about disabled warriors being charity cases. As he turned toward the exit, acceptance of failure settling over him like a shroud. Movement in his peripheral vision made him pause. The janitor had set down his mop and was walking calmly toward the training area. His posture had changed completely. No longer the humble maintenance worker, but someone moving with quiet, deadly purpose. "Perhaps the master would like to demonstrate proper technique for overcoming physical limitations," the janitor said, his accented voice carrying clearly across the silent room. Nakamura laughed dismissively, not recognizing the subtle shift in atmosphere that had captured Bobby's attention. And what would a janitor know about martial arts? The janitor bowed respectfully, his movements suddenly flowing with decades of ingrained precision. "May I show a small demonstration of adaptive forms?" Something familiar flickered in Bobby's memory as he watched the man's stance subtly shift. Several students exchanged glances, sensing they were witnessing something unexpected but not yet understanding what. The janitor began with basic Wing Chun movements, each technique flowing seamlessly into the next despite his own slight limp. His form was absolute perfection, every angle precise, every transition smooth as silk. Decades of mastery evident in movements that looked effortless but contained devastating power. The room fell completely silent as recognition dawned on faces. Throughout the audience, "Oh my God," a teenager whispered. "You're Donnie Yen." The training room crackled with electric tension as whispers of recognition rippled through the stunned audience. Students lowered their phones in awe, suddenly realizing they were in the presence of a living legend. Nakamura's face cycled rapidly through surprise, embarrassment, and desperate calculation as he tried to process how Donnie Yen had been working in his dojo unnoticed for months. "I have been here studying American martial arts culture while recovering from my own injuries," Yen explained calmly, his voice carrying the quiet authority that had commanded movie sets and training halls across the globe. "What I witnessed yesterday violated everything our arts should represent." He turned to address the room, his presence transforming the space from a competitive arena into a place of learning. True martial arts is not about perfection of form, but the journey of self-improvement despite our limitations. Every warrior faces obstacles. The greatest victory is overcoming what others believe impossible. Bobby felt tears welling in his eyes as his childhood hero spoke directly about his situation. The man he'd watched in countless films, whose movements had inspired him during lonely nights in Afghanistan, was defending him against the cruelty he'd endured. Nakamura attempted to salvage his authority by claiming he hadn't realized a fellow master was present, but Yen's steady gaze cut through the political maneuvering like a blade through silk. "I have known blind masters who could defeat sighted opponents through superior technique," Yen continued, his words carrying the weight of decades of experience. "I have trained with fighters missing limbs who adapted their styles to become more effective than conventional practitioners." Physical limitation often breeds innovation that transcends traditional boundaries. Students and parents listened with rapt attention as Yen demonstrated how Wing Chun's efficiency principles made it perfect for adaptive martial arts. He moved through modified forms that maintained every bit of effectiveness while accommodating physical challenges, each technique a masterclass in adaptation over rigidity. Several students were recording again, but now with reverence rather than mockery, understanding they were witnessing martial arts philosophy at its highest level. The legendary master's eyes found Bobby's across the room, and in that gaze was recognition of one warrior acknowledging another's worthiness despite the obstacles they faced. "Would you like to learn what real martial arts looks like?" Yen asked, extending his hand toward the veteran. "I will teach you personally." Bobby stared at Donnie Yen's extended hand, his mind struggling to process that this moment was actually happening. The room held its collective breath as the decorated Marine reached out and clasped the master's hand, sealing an agreement that would change everything. Nakamura found himself trapped by circumstances beyond his control. With legendary Donnie Yen making public offers to train at his facility, refusing would destroy what remained of his reputation after yesterday's media disaster. Through gritted teeth, he agreed to let Yen convert the storage room into a private training space. "The back room has good natural light and enough space for proper training," Mrs. Rodriguez suggested helpfully, clearly delighted by this turn of events. "I can have maintenance clear it out this afternoon." That evening, Bobby returned to help prepare their training space. Working alongside his hero felt surreal. Donnie Yen, international action star and martial arts legend, stacking boxes and arranging basic equipment like any dedicated teacher preparing for his students. "Martial arts is not about achieving perfection," Yen explained as they worked, "but about finding your personal best within your circumstances. Every limitation can become an advantage when properly understood and adapted." Their conversation revealed the depth of Yen's philosophy. He shared stories of his own struggles with injuries throughout his film career, broken bones that required modified choreography, torn ligaments that forced him to develop new techniques, surgeries that taught him patience and adaptation. "Each setback taught me something new about the art," Yen reflected. "Physical training often heals emotional wounds that medicine cannot touch. The discipline required to overcome obstacles builds character stronger than any technique." Bobby opened up about his PTSD, the nightmares that plagued his sleep, and the profound disconnection he felt from his family and civilian life. Yen listened, without judgment, nodding with understanding that came from years of pushing through his own physical and mental barriers. "In Chinese culture, we believe that the warrior's greatest battle is with himself," Yen said quietly. "External opponents are temporary challenges. Internal opponents, fear, doubt, shame, these are the enemies that can destroy us if not confronted." They planned to meet every morning at 6 a.m. before the dojo officially opened, when they could train without distraction or interruption. As Bobby drove home that night, he called Linda to share the incredible developments. For the first time since losing his leg, genuine hope flickered in his chest. Not just hope for physical recovery, but for reclaiming the warrior identity that defined who he truly was. At 5:45 the next morning, Bobby arrived at Dragon's Gate Dojo to find Yen already stretching in their converted training room, having arranged mirrors, basic striking pads, and meditation mats with careful precision. Their first formal lesson focused on foundation, not physical techniques, but mental preparation and internal balance. Yen explained that Wing Chun's centerline theory applied to life. Find your center, protect it, and move from that stable foundation. "Your prosthetic is not a weakness," Yen demonstrated, showing Bobby how to use the artificial limb as an anchor point for stability and leverage. "In Wing Chun, we adapt to circumstances rather than forcing circumstances to adapt to us." They worked through basic stances, with Yen patiently adjusting Bobby's posture and explaining how each position could be modified for his unique situation. The morning session included meditation, breathing exercises specifically designed for PTSD management, and balance drills that turned Bobby's supposed limitation into a training advantage. Economy of motion over flashy techniques, Yen emphasized, demonstrating movements with fluid precision. Wing Chun teaches us that the shortest distance between 2 points is also the most efficient path to victory. Bobby struggled initially, his military training having emphasized power over finesse, but his natural discipline and ability to follow orders served him well. Each day brought gradual improvement as Yen adapted traditional Wing Chun forms to accommodate Bobby's prosthetic. The training montages showed Bobby's progression over 2 weeks, first maintaining balance during basic drills, then executing modified forms, finally beginning to understand how his artificial leg could enhance rather than hinder certain techniques. Your prosthetic creates angles that opponents will not expect, Yen explained during one session. Traditional fighters train to defend against natural body mechanics. Your adapted techniques will confuse and overwhelm conventional responses. Their bond deepened through shared warrior experiences and mutual respect. Yen's patient teaching style combined Eastern philosophy with practical combat application, while Bobby's military background helped him grasp tactical concepts quickly. The breakthrough came during their 14th training session when Bobby successfully completed his first full form without losing balance or requiring modification. His movements flowed smoothly from technique to technique. The prosthetic integrated seamlessly into the choreography. Yen nodded with quiet approval, a small smile crossing his weathered features. Now you begin to understand what you are truly capable of achieving. Word of Bobby's training with Donnie Yen spread rapidly through veterans networks and disability communities across Southern California. Other wounded warriors began appearing at the dojo's windows during morning sessions, drawn by curiosity and hope that maybe they too could find healing through martial arts. Marcus Rivera, a Marine who'd lost both legs to an IED in Iraq, approached Bobby after one particularly intense training session. Is it true what people are saying? That Donnie Yen is teaching adaptive martial arts. Behind Marcus stood Susan Blake, an Army veteran whose visible scars told stories of combat trauma and long recovery. Her eyes held the same mixture of hope and skepticism that Bobby remembered from his own first visit to the dojo. It's true, Bobby confirmed, still catching his breath from their morning workout. Master Yen believes martial arts should serve everyone willing to work hard, regardless of physical limitations. When Bobby mentioned the interest to Yen, the master's response was immediate and enthusiastic. Excellent. I have wanted to formalize an adaptive program since witnessing your treatment here. These warriors deserve proper instruction. Yen approached Nakamura about scheduling evening classes specifically for adaptive martial arts. The dojo owner could not refuse Donnie Yen publicly without destroying his remaining credibility. Though his reluctance was obvious, the first official adaptive class drew 15 students representing various physical challenges and mental health struggles, veterans with missing limbs, individuals with mobility issues, and people seeking confidence through discipline training. Yen taught fundamental principles that worked regardless of physical limitations, emphasizing mental discipline, situational awareness, and techniques adapted for each student's unique circumstances. His patient instruction and philosophical approach created an atmosphere of mutual respect and shared purpose. Local media returned to document this positive transformation, contrasting it sharply with the earlier discrimination controversy. Channel 7's follow-up story showed veterans helping each other master modified techniques, while Yen provided gentle corrections and encouragement. This is what martial arts should look like, Janet Parker reported. Not exclusion based on physical differences, but inclusion based on warrior spirit and determination to overcome obstacles. The dojo's reputation began shifting from elitist competition factory to genuine community resource. Traditional students started attending adaptive classes as observers, many expressing amazement at the skill and dedication they witnessed. After the successful first adaptive class ended, Nakamura approached Yen privately, his expression troubled by the changes transforming his carefully controlled environment. Master Yen, I'm concerned these special needs students are changing our competitive reputation, he said quietly. My traditional students train for tournaments, not therapy sessions. Yen responded to Nakamura's concerns with quiet authority that brooked no argument. True martial arts mastery includes teaching others, regardless of their starting point. A master who cannot adapt his teaching to serve all students has mastered nothing but ego. Over the following month, Bobby's transformation became undeniable. His confidence grew with each training session as Yen's patient instruction unlocked abilities Bobby never knew he possessed. The nightmares that had plagued his sleep began subsiding, replaced by the mental discipline and focus that intense training demanded. Linda noticed the changes first. Bobby engaged more actively with Emma and Grace during dinner conversations. His posture straightened with returning self-respect, and the hollow look in his eyes gradually filled with renewed purpose. Their marriage strengthened as Bobby reclaimed the warrior identity that defined his core character. The training intensified as Bobby mastered fundamental Wing Chun principles. Yen taught him to use his prosthetic strategically, creating unexpected angles and strikes that would confuse opponents trained to defend against conventional attacks. Bobby's military background accelerated his understanding of tactical concepts and combat psychology. Your artificial leg becomes a weapon when properly employed, Yen demonstrated during one session. Opponents expect natural movement patterns. Your adapted techniques will overwhelm their defensive responses. Bobby began assisting with newer adaptive students, discovering he possessed natural teaching ability inherited from his military leadership experience. Veterans responded to his combination of technical knowledge and shared understanding of overcoming physical trauma through disciplined training. Local veterans organizations took notice, inviting Bobby to speak about his journey at monthly meetings and support group gatherings. His story resonated powerfully with other wounded warriors seeking purpose and identity beyond their injuries. Media attention continued building as Bobby's progress became a symbol of adaptive martial arts potential. During one evening news interview, he demonstrated advanced techniques that showcased how far he'd progressed from the stumbling veteran who'd been mocked months earlier. The reporter's final question planted a seed that would change everything. Bobby, would you ever consider testing these skills in actual competition? Proving that adaptive martial arts can compete at the highest levels. Bobby's eyes found Yen's across the training room, both men understanding that the suggestion represented the ultimate validation of everything they'd worked to achieve together. The next morning, Bobby brought up the competition question during their training session, his voice carrying a mixture of excitement and determination that Yen recognized from his own competitive fighting days. I've been thinking about what that reporter asked, Bobby said as they worked through advanced forms. Maybe it's time to test these techniques in real competition, show skeptics that adaptive martial arts isn't just therapy. Yen paused there, drilling, his expression reflecting the mixed emotions Bobby's suggestion had stirred. Years of film work and real combat had taught him that competition carried risks extending far beyond physical injury, especially for someone whose confidence remained fragile despite remarkable progress. Competition tests more than technique, Yen warned carefully. It reveals character under extreme pressure. Are you prepared for that level of scrutiny and potential failure? But Bobby's military background had prepared him for exactly this kind of challenge. The idea of proving himself publicly, of validating their adaptive techniques against conventional fighters, appealed to the warrior mentality that defined his core identity. Research revealed the California Open Martial Arts Championship included divisions for adaptive competitors, with full contact rules and professional oversight. The tournament attracted serious martial artists from across the state, making it a legitimate testing ground for their innovative techniques. If we do this, training intensity increases dramatically, Yen explained as they studied competition. Requirements. Sparring becomes more aggressive, conditioning more demanding, mental preparation more crucial than anything we've done. Preparation began immediately with Yen designing competition-specific strategies that maximized Bobby's adapted techniques while minimizing his vulnerabilities. The adaptive martial arts class became Bobby's support team, with every student invested in his success representing their community. Behind the scenes, Nakamura watched these developments with growing resentment. Bobby's potential competition success would validate everything Nakamura had rejected about adaptive martial arts, undermining the exclusive reputation he'd spent years building. That evening, Nakamura made several phone calls to former students who'd moved into semi-professional fighting circuits. Marcus Webb, a powerful striker who'd left the dojo 2 years earlier after personality conflicts, listened with interest as his former teacher proposed a lucrative arrangement. Easy money. Marcus, Nakamura promised. Disabled veteran thinks he can compete with real fighters. Someone needs to teach him reality. Webb agreed without hesitation, seeing opportunity to dominate a crippled opponent while earning significant payment for minimal effort. The stage was set for confrontation that would test everything Bobby and Yen had built together. 2 weeks. Before competition, training intensity reached levels that pushed Bobby beyond anything he'd experienced since Marine Corps boot camp. Yen prepared him not just for physical combat, but for the psychological warfare that serious competition demanded. Visualization is as important as physical technique, Yen explained during meditation sessions designed to prepare Bobby's mind. For full contact fighting, see yourself succeeding under pressure. Feel the movements flowing perfectly despite chaos surrounding you. They practice scenarios that might arise during competition, fighting while exhausted, adapting to unexpected opponent strategies, maintaining focus despite crowd noise and emotional pressure. Yin shared personal stories from his most challenging film fights and real confrontations, teaching Bobby that victory came from preparation and adaptability rather than raw physical strength. Your greatest advantage is that opponents will underestimate you, Yin emphasized during intense sparring sessions. They will see disability where you have developed superior technique through necessity. The training sequences showcased Bobby mastering complex combinations that utilized his unique situation. His prosthetic leg became an integral part of striking, patterns that no conventional fighter would anticipate or know how to counter effectively. Linda and the twins began attending evening sessions, becoming part of the extended family that Bobby's martial arts community had created. Emma and Grace watched their father train with wide-eyed admiration, seeing him transform from broken veteran into confident warrior before their eyes. Other adaptive students helped with sparring, each bringing different challenges that prepared Bobby for various scenarios he might face. In competition, Yin emphasized that winning wasn't the ultimate goal. Proving that limitations existed only in the mind was the real victory they sought. Competition will test everything we have built together, Yin reflected during one of their final intensive training sessions. Technique, conditioning, mental strength, and most importantly, your belief in yourself as a complete warrior. The dojo's atmosphere had transformed completely from Nakamura's original elitist vision. Traditional students now trained alongside adaptive practitioners, all united by respect for dedication and skill rather than physical perfection. 3 days before competition, Bobby felt as ready as intensive preparation could make him. His forms flowed with confidence, his sparring showed tactical intelligence, and his mental state reflected the calm focus of someone who had reclaimed his warrior identity. Yin expressed quiet pride in his students' development, both as a martial artist and as a person who had overcome seemingly insurmountable obstacles through disciplined effort and refusal to accept limitation. The night before competition, Bobby completed his final preparations at the dojo with calm confidence. Yin reviewed their strategic approach one last time. Defensive patience until opponents revealed patterns, then explosive counterattacks using adapted techniques that conventional fighters couldn't anticipate. The entire adaptive martial arts class planned to attend as Bobby's support team, creating a community atmosphere that transformed individual competition into collective validation of their training methods. Bobby felt surrounded by genuine family rather than facing this challenge alone. As he left the dojo around 9 p.m., 2 men approached him in the dimly lit parking lot. They introduced themselves as martial arts enthusiasts who'd followed his story and wanted to wish him luck in tomorrow's competition. "We'd love to see some of those techniques Donnie Yen taught you," one man said with apparent enthusiasm. "Just a quick demonstration before the big day." Bobby, feeling generous and confident, agreed to show them a few basic forms. The men positioned themselves to get better angles for viewing, asking him to repeat certain movements while they asked technical questions. During one demonstration sequence, as Bobby executed a spinning technique, one man accidentally stumbled backward into Bobby's supporting leg. The collision sent both men tumbling, with the stranger's full weight crashing into Bobby's natural knee. Pain shot through Bobby's leg like lightning as ligaments hyperextended under the unexpected impact. The men apologized profusely, helping him to his feet while expressing concern about the unfortunate accident. "I'm so sorry, brother," the man said, his voice filled with apparent remorse. These parking lots are so uneven. Are you okay? Should we call someone? Bobby limped to his truck, trying to downplay the injury despite throbbing pain that intensified with each step. He didn't want to worry Linda or create drama on the night before competition that BY morning. His knee was severely swollen and painful to touch. Linda insisted on urgent care, where X-rays revealed strained ligaments without fractures. The doctor recommended rest and postponing athletic activities. I can't withdraw now, Bobby told Yen when his master arrived at the hospital. Too many people are counting on this. Yen studied his student's injured leg with suspicious eyes, recognizing that accidents rarely occurred with such perfect timing. But Bobby's determination was absolute. He would compete despite being handicapped beyond his original limitations. Then we adapt our strategy completely, Yen said grimly. You will fight essentially on one good leg. Competition morning arrived, gray and overcast at the Riverside Convention Center, where banners announcing the California Open Martial Arts Championship fluttered in the autumn breeze. Bobby arrived with Linda, the twins, and his entire adaptive martial arts family forming a support convoy that filled half the parking lot. His injured knee, heavily wrapped and throbbing with each step, drew concerned glances from his supporters. Marcus Rivera wheeled alongside Bobby toward the entrance, offering quiet encouragement. You've got this, brother. Show them what Marines are made of. Inside the massive venue, martial arts schools from across California set up camp areas with banners, equipment, and team uniforms. The energy was electric. Competitors warming up, coaches giving last-minute instructions, families claiming prime viewing spots for the day's battles. Nakamura arrived with his traditional students, making an elaborate show of confidence while secretly coordinating with Marcus Webb through subtle text messages. Webb had registered under his current gym's name to avoid obvious connections to Dragon's Gate Dojo. Bobby went through modified warm-up routines that accommodated both his prosthetic and the fresh knee injury. Yen adapted their pre-competition strategy completely, focusing on defensive techniques and precise counterattacks that minimized movement while maximizing effectiveness. Today you represent every person told they cannot achieve their dreams, Yen said quietly as they prepared. Your victory is not measured by tournament results, but by courage to face this challenge despite overwhelming obstacles. Media representatives noticed the adaptive martial arts contingent, with several reporters recognizing Bobby from previous coverage. Cameras captured the underdog story unfolding, decorated veteran overcoming double disability to compete against able-bodied opponents. Other competitors observed Bobby's obvious additional injury with mixed reactions. Some expressed genuine concern and respect for his determination, while others saw opportunity to exploit visible weakness. Competition officials conducted standard weigh-ins and equipment inspections, ensuring Bobby's prosthetic met safety requirements. The atmosphere grew tense as Bobby's first match approached, with his entire support team claiming ringside seats. Yen delivered final instructions with calm authority. Remember why you are here. Today you fight not just for yourself, but for everyone who has been told they cannot. Show them what a true warrior looks like. The announcement echoed through the venue. Bobby Crawford to Ring 3 for his opening match. Bobby entered the competition ring to thunderous applause from his adaptive martial arts family, their cheers echoing off the convention center's high ceiling. Across from him stood Marcus Webb, 6 feet 1 inch of pure muscle, moving with the predatory confidence of someone who had never faced real adversity. Webb's strategy became immediately apparent as the first round began. He used his superior mobility to circle constantly, throwing leg kicks aimed specifically at Bobby's injured knee while avoiding close-quarters combat, where Wing Chun might prove effective. Stay patient, Yen called from the corner as Bobby absorbed punishment. Let him reveal his patterns. His overconfidence will create opportunities. The opening exchanges were brutal for Bobby. Webb's kicks found their target repeatedly, each impact sending waves of agony through his damaged ligaments. The crowd watched nervously as their underdog hero appeared outmatched against his younger, stronger opponent. Webb grew increasingly cocky as the round progressed, taunting Bobby about his disabilities while landing shots with casual cruelty. What's wrong, Pegleg? Can't keep up with a real fighter? Bobby followed Yen's defensive game plan, absorbing damage while studying Webb's movement patterns and timing. His military training helped him endure pain while maintaining tactical awareness, looking for the opening that patience would eventually provide. Between rounds, Yen made crucial adjustments to their strategy. He drops his left hand after combinations. His footwork becomes sloppy when he talks. Use his arrogance against him. The second round showed subtle changes in Bobby's approach. He still played defense, but with more purpose, baiting Webb into overcommitting while setting up counterattacks. The adaptive martial arts crowd began sensing a shift in momentum. The turning point came when Webb overextended on a particularly vicious leg kick, leaving himself momentarily off balance. Bobby demonstrated the first of Yen's adapted Wing Chun techniques, a perfectly timed elbow strike that caught Webb completely off guard. The impact staggered Webb, wiping the smirk from his face as he realized this disabled veteran possessed skills he hadn't anticipated. The crowd erupted in sustained cheers, sensing that their underdog might actually have a chance. Bobby pressed forward carefully, his confidence growing with the successful implementation of techniques they'd drilled thousands of times. The real fight was just beginning, and Webb's expression showed the first flickers of doubt about his easy victory. The third round opened with completely different energy as Bobby began implementing Yen's most innovative adaptations. His prosthetic leg, which Webb had viewed as pure weakness, became an unexpected weapon delivering strikes from angles no conventional fighter would anticipate. Webb struggled to adjust his defensive strategy as Bobby demonstrated techniques that defied traditional martial arts logic. The artificial limb served as both shield against low kicks and club for devastating counterstrikes that exploited Webb's confusion. "That's it," Yen shouted from the corner. "Show them what adaptation looks like." The crowd became increasingly engaged as they witnessed revolutionary martial arts in action. Bobby's military tactical thinking combined with Yen's philosophical approach created fighting style unlike anything the judges had seen before. Webb's earlier taunts transformed into desperate attempts to regain control through raw aggression. But Bobby's patient defensive training paid dividends. Every wild attack created counter-opportunities that his adapted techniques exploited mercilessly. The momentum shift was complete when Bobby trapped Webb's leg using his prosthetic and delivered a devastating combination that sent his opponent staggering backward. The technique was pure Wing Chun efficiency adapted for his unique circumstances. "Impossible," Webb gasped, blood trickling from his nose as he realized the disabled veteran was systematically dismantling his game plan. Bobby pressured Webb against the ropes, landing precise strikes that demonstrated the full effectiveness of Yen's teaching methods. Each technique flowed seamlessly into the next, the prosthetic integrated so naturally that it seemed like an advantage rather than limitation. The judges leaned forward, recognizing they were witnessing something historically significant in martial arts evolution. Traditional techniques adapted for unique circumstances without losing effectiveness or beauty. Webb's conditioning began failing under the psychological pressure of being dominated by someone he'd expected to crush easily. His movements became increasingly desperate as Bobby controlled distance and timing with masterful precision. The final minute of the round showcased everything Bobby had learned: mental discipline overcoming physical limitation, technique defeating raw strength, and warrior spirit transcending any obstacle placed in its path. As the round ended, Bobby stood confidently in the center of the ring while Webb retreated to his corner. No longer the predator, but clearly the prey in this evolving combat situation. The scorecards reflected what everyone in the venue had witnessed. Bobby Crawford was winning this fight through superior martial arts, not sympathy or luck. Bobby dominated the final round. Nakamura's frustration boiled over from his position at ringside. His carefully planned humiliation was backfiring spectacularly, as the veteran he'd mocked systematically destroyed Webb's reputation and his own credibility. "Get up, Marcus," Nakamura shouted, his voice carrying undertones of panic as his paid fighter struggled against techniques he'd never encountered. "Stop playing with this cripple." The outburst drew disapproving looks from competition officials and spectators who recognized unsportsmanlike conduct when they witnessed it. Nakamura's desperation was becoming as obvious as his prejudices when Bobby trapped Webb in a corner and began landing combinations that showcased the full effectiveness of adaptive Wing Chun. Nakamura abandoned all pretense of propriety. He moved closer to the ring, shouting instructions that bordered on coaching interference. "This is fixed," Nakamura declared loudly enough for nearby spectators to hear. No disabled fighter could legitimately defeat a real martial artist. Yen stepped forward with the calm, measured movement of someone who had reached the limits of his patience. "Your student fights with honor," he stated clearly. "Perhaps his teacher should do the same." "Don't lecture me about honor," Nakamura snapped, his face flushed with embarrassment and rage. "You've made a mockery of legitimate martial arts with this circus show." The confrontation escalated when Nakamura made the critical error of placing his hands on Yen, pushing the legendary master backward in a display of disrespect that violated every principle of martial arts conduct. Yen's response was instantaneous and decisive. In movements too fast for spectators to follow completely, he controlled and neutralized Nakamura using pure Wing Chun technique. No flashy demonstrations, just effortless mastery that left the younger man on the ground. The entire exchange lasted perhaps 3 seconds, but left no doubt about the vast difference in skill levels between the two masters. Nakamura found himself controlled and helpless without understanding how it had happened. "Touch me again," Yen said quietly, "and you will learn why some legends never fade." Competition officials immediately removed Nakamura from ringside for interference and unsportsmanlike conduct, while the crowd witnessed a living legend defending the principles of true martial arts against arrogance and prejudice. With distractions eliminated, Bobby faced Webb for their final confrontation, both fighters exhausted, but only one possessing the mental strength and technical superiority necessary for victory. The stage was set for the climactic moments that would validate everything Bobby and Yen had built together. The final minute of competition began with Bobby clearly ahead on all scorecards, but Webb desperate to land a knockout blow that would save face and avoid the humiliation of losing to a disabled opponent he'd underestimated completely. Webb abandoned all strategy for raw aggression, throwing wild combinations with the reckless desperation of someone facing career-ending defeat. His technique deteriorated as panic set in, replacing tactical thinking with brute force that Bobby methodically countered. "Stay calm," Yen called from the corner. "Let his desperation create the opening you need." Bobby's response demonstrated everything he'd learned about mental discipline overcoming physical limitation. Each of Webb's desperate attacks was met with precise defensive technique followed by calculated counterstrikes that showcased adapted Wing Chun at its finest. The climactic sequence began when Webb overcommit to a wild haymaker that left him completely exposed. Bobby's response was poetry in motion. His prosthetic leg trapped Webb's supporting foot while his hands delivered a textbook centerline strike that dropped his opponent to the canvas. Webb struggled to rise, his confidence shattered and his body betrayed by the superior martial arts he'd never learned to respect. The technique that finished him wasn't flashy or dramatic, just perfectly executed Wing Chun adapted for Bobby's unique circumstances. When the referee raised Bobby's hand in victory, the entire convention center erupted. Veterans in the audience stood and saluted while the adaptive martial arts students rushed the ring in celebration that transcended individual achievement. Bobby broke down in tears of triumph, overwhelmed by the validation of everything he'd worked to prove. This victory represented more than winning a tournament. It was reclaiming his warrior identity and proving that limitations existed only in closed minds. Yen entered the ring to embrace his student, whispering words of pride and accomplishment that only Bobby could hear above the roaring crowd. "You have honored not just yourself, but everyone who refuses to accept defeat." Linda and the twins joined the celebration as photographers captured the moment when a decorated Marine proved that true warriors adapt and overcome any obstacle placed in their path. The scorecards were unanimous. Bobby Crawford had won through superior technique, mental preparation, and indomitable spirit that no physical limitation could diminish. The victory celebration continued as reporters surrounded Bobby and Yen, eager to capture the story that would inspire countless others. Facing similar challenges, Bobby's interview became a teaching moment as he demonstrated the modified techniques that had led to his unprecedented success. "This victory belongs to everyone who has been told they cannot achieve their dreams," Bobby said, his voice strong, with conviction earned through months of grueling preparation. Adaptive martial arts isn't therapy, it's evolution. Yen used the media attention to explain the philosophical principles underlying their training methods. Traditional martial arts must grow to serve all students. The techniques remain effective. Only the application changes to accommodate individual circumstances. As the crowd began to disperse, an unexpected figure approached their celebration. Nakamura, recovered from his earlier humiliation and having witnessed the decisive defeat of his prejudices, walked slowly toward Bobby and Yen. "I owe you an apology," Nakamura said quietly, his voice carrying genuine humility that replaced his earlier arrogance. "Everything I believed about disability and martial arts was wrong. You've shown me that my understanding was limited by my own narrow thinking." The moment transformed from simple sports victory into something deeper, a demonstration of how witnessing authentic courage and skill could change hearts and minds previously closed by prejudice and fear. "I would like to learn about adaptive techniques," Nakamura continued, addressing Yen with the respect due between masters. "My dojo needs to evolve to serve all students who are willing to work hard." The media captured this reconciliation, creating a powerful narrative about growth, redemption, and the unifying power of martial arts properly understood and practiced. Bobby's victory had accomplished more than tournament success. It had changed minds. Competition officials approached to discuss making adaptive divisions a permanent feature of future tournaments. Other martial arts schools expressed interest in learning Yen's teaching methods and incorporating inclusive training into their programs. The ripple effects extended beyond individual achievement. Bobby's story would inspire veterans, disabled individuals, and anyone facing obstacles that seemed insurmountable. His victory proved that determination combined with proper training could overcome any limitation. That evening, the celebration moved to Dragon's Gate Dojo, where traditional students, adaptive martial artists, families, and community members gathered in an atmosphere of mutual respect and shared achievement. The victory belonged to everyone who had supported Bobby's journey from humiliated veteran to champion martial artist. 2 weeks after the competition, Yen announced his decision to return to film production, having completed his recovery and eager to incorporate adaptive martial arts into his next movie project. The announcement brought mixed emotions, pride in his students' achievement tempered by sadness at losing such an inspiring mentor. Yen and Nakamura worked together to establish a permanent adaptive martial arts program at Dragon's Gate Dojo, with Bobby serving as the lead instructor. The collaboration between former adversaries demonstrated how competition success had transformed the entire community's understanding of martial arts purpose. "You possess the knowledge, experience, and most importantly, the heart necessary to teach others," Yen told Bobby during their transition planning. "Your journey from student to master represents the true martial arts path." Bobby embraced his new role with the same dedication he'd brought to military service and competition training. Students traveled from across Southern California to learn adaptive techniques, while other dojos sent instructors to study methods that were revolutionizing martial arts instruction. The Crawford family thrived as Bobby regained his sense of purpose and identity. Linda returned to college part-time, pursuing the education degree she'd postponed during his military career and recovery. Her own dreams could flourish now that Bobby had reclaimed his confidence. Emma and Grace began their own martial arts training, inspired by their father's transformation and eager to learn the discipline that had restored their family's strength. Watching them train filled Bobby with pride that transcended any tournament victory. Yen established the Adaptive Martial Arts Foundation with Bobby as regional coordinator, providing grants and instruction for veterans and disabled individuals. Nationwide, their success in Riverside became a model replicated in communities across America. The transformation was complete, from humiliated veteran to inspiring teacher, from broken man to community leader. Bobby had found his true calling in lifting others up and proving that every person possessed warrior potential waiting to be unlocked. At Yen's farewell dinner, attended by the entire dojo community, the master presented Bobby with a traditional Wing Chun instructor's sash. The ceremony formally recognized Bobby as qualified to teach and carry on the lineage that had saved his life. "You are no longer my student. Yen announced to the assembled crowd. You are my brother in martial arts, proven through trial and worthy of passing this knowledge to the next generation. 6 months later, Dragon's Gate Dojo had become an internationally recognized model for inclusive martial arts training. Visitors from around the world came to observe Bobby's adaptive program, which now served 30 regular students with various physical challenges and mental health needs. Bobby's morning classes filled with veterans seeking purpose, disabled individuals building confidence, and elderly practitioners discovering that age was just another limitation to overcome through proper training and determination. His teaching style combined Yen's philosophical wisdom with military precision and motivational leadership. The dojo thrived under its new inclusive philosophy, proving that excellence and accessibility could coexist beautifully. Traditional students, trained alongside adaptive practitioners, all united by respect for dedication and skill rather than arbitrary physical standards. Nakamura had become a genuine advocate for adaptive martial arts, his earlier prejudices completely replaced by deep admiration for his students' determination. The transformation in his character represented redemption through exposure to authentic courage and perseverance. Several of Bobby's original adaptive students had competed successfully in tournaments, spreading awareness of modified techniques throughout the martial arts community. Their achievements validated the training methods that had once been dismissed as mere therapy. Bobby's story had inspired a documentary film and book deal, with all proceeds supporting veteran rehabilitation programs nationwide. His journey from broken soldier to martial arts master resonated with audiences seeking proof that human potential could overcome any obstacle. A surprise video call from Hong Kong interrupted one evening class, with Yen appearing on the large screen to address his former students. He was surrounded by film stars and producers, planning a movie featuring adaptive martial arts prominently in the storyline. Bobby has proven that limitation exists only in closed minds, Yen told the assembled class. His legacy will inspire generations of warriors who refuse to accept defeat. The story concluded with Bobby leading his advanced evening class through forms that showcased months of dedicated training. Through the large windows, sunset light illuminated a dojo where every student, regardless of physical ability, trained with equal dedication and mutual respect. Bobby caught his reflection in the mirror and saw not a disabled veteran, but a master martial artist who had found his true calling in proving that warrior spirit transcended any physical limitation. The final image showed him bowing to students who returned the gesture with genuine respect, completing the circle that defined authentic martial arts tradition. If you like the story, please watch another story on our channel and subscribe to the channel.